What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to PokeMarketLab. Today, we have episode 2 in our Pokemon Investing 101 series. This one is about risk. You've gone out, you've got your investment in your box, your booster box, your premium collection, whatever it is. You throw it on a shelf, you leave it there for 5 years. That's it, right? Well, yeah, but there's some considerations there. There's some risk. When you buy a stock, whatever that is, right? It sits in a brokerage account. There's no risk in having that stock, right? There's nothing you need to do to protect it other than making sure, you keep your account safe, right? When you bring sealed Pokemon products into wherever, either it's a place of business that you have, maybe it's a store or something like that, or a storage unit, your home, wherever that is, there is risk in holding that product for a long period of time. So today we're going to go over what those risks are. I think most people can probably imagine what they are. Let's talk about those risks, which ones are important, which ones we can mitigate. And that's really what this is about. It's about, part of our plan. We talked about the financial plan in terms of how much money we're allocating and what type of money we're allocating to the Pokemon investing hobby. But this one, this is part of the plan. You can't just take it and throw it on a shelf. I mean, you can, but you need to know what those risks are in storing that product. If your time horizon is a long period of time, which I think it should be, there are a lot of things can happen in a 5 to 10 year time horizon. So first bullet point here, there are numerous types of underlying risks associated with storing sealed collectibles for a long period of time. We're going to talk about those. Again, one of them is going to be fire, one of them is going to be water, theft, and a couple others. Some of these risks can be mitigated, but not eliminated. And these storage risks are far too often disregarded. This is a lot of people, they'll see a hype video, they'll say, oh, this is easy. I'm going to go online, buy a box, get it, and put it on a shelf. And again, they don't think about the money part, the risk part, and then one of the bigger ones we're going to talk about in the future is the liquidation part. These are all extra steps. This is all extra hassle and time that comes along with this hobby. And I'm not saying that to dissuade you from doing it. I'm just putting this information out there. These are things that I've experienced and learned over my years in doing this. And the hope is that by putting this out there, this can at least spark some conversation and some thought in those that are getting started in this. When I started in this hobby, I was the same way. I was like, oh, this is easy. This is great. This is something I love. I can make some money on it, and I'll just go out and buy some boxes. And again, over time, as my collection grew, that worry started to grow about that risk. And one of the things I want to note too is risk mitigation scales negatively the larger your collection becomes. For instance, if you buy a few booster boxes and you throw them in one of those really nice plastic totes that has a seal on it, it's almost, I don't want to say it's airtight. It's certainly, you can get ones that are watertight. That's great for a small collection. Well, what if your collection balloons to, $50,000 worth of booster boxes? Well, I can tell you from experience that becomes much harder to spend that time and that money trying to buy, totes to store all this stuff and everything. It reduces the visibility of the product. Some people, when they, from an investment or collecting standpoint, they like to display the booster boxes or the ETBs. And again, all these things that we're talking about, they're not, I don't want you to think that they mitigate the risk completely, because they don't. It's just, there's some low hanging fruit items that you can do to help reduce these risks. And there are costs and time and hassle with trying to mitigate these risks, which we'll talk a little bit about. And physical loss of product is an inherent and likely unavoidable part of physically holding a sealed collectible for a long period of time. And the reason I say that, it's not that you're going to have water damage or fire damage or theft. The most likely cause of any damage is before you even receive the product, it's in shipping. I can tell you from experience, one of my plans, one of the things I like to do especially like a Surging Sparks or something like that, when I want to diversify my purchase prior to receiving them to reduce my risk of getting impacted from a cancellation or something like that. I'm getting product from 5 or 6 different either distributors or just online retailers. You will experience damage in transit. It's inevitable if you're buying a lot of product over a period of time, okay? And that's the most likely scenario that the most likely risk that you're gonna have in your collecting and investing journey. And it's one of the things you need to consider too is who you're buying it from. Like if you're buying it from a reputable platform like a TCG Player, eBay, that's reduction in risk because those platforms will back you up should that product derive damage, or if maybe that damage isn't legit, it's fake cards or something like that. They'll back you up versus, you find this retailer online, they got some really good pricing, probably too good to be true. You pay with like Shop Pay, there's no PayPal or anything like that. You've added to the risk because if a product shows up damaged, they may not go to bat for you no one may go to bat for you to replace that product. And I would say, again, this is the most likely risk that you will experience in your journey. And one of the things too is that risk to the sealed product is incongruous with what the market demands out of the product when you go to liquidate it, right? The market wants a pristine product. The market will place a high value on a pristine product. So making sure when you're storing it, it's not just damage. It could be mold. It could be even rodents. Like I've heard of people storing Pokemon booster boxes in their garage, which is just nuts to me. So where you store your product is very important. Now let's go over the types of risk, and most of these are, some of these are almost acts of God, and God forbid, hopefully you never experience them. But again, I just want you to think about them. First one being fire, extremely unlikely. The same types of things that you do in your home to protect yourself are the same things that, hopefully protect your product. But at the end of the day, you should never be making a decision about, trying to grab product if your smoke alarms are going off. So those smoke alarms they're not saving your product at the end of the day. There's very little you can do to stop the fire risk to a product. You can't. There's fireproof safes and things like that, but smoke damage is still going to be a thing. Fireproof safes are really small. You can't store much in them. If you're talking about really expensive booster boxes, we're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars, then maybe you might want to consider a safe, a waterproof safe, a fireproof safe, because the cost of that investment to protect the product is worthwhile given the underlying product you're protecting is of a high value. And then let's talk about water. Water is, I would say water is higher on the likely risk scale here because I've experienced some water damage to product. Luckily, it was super minimal. Unfortunately, the volume of product that I have to store it in my basement, which is, again, we're going to talk about the location of product. Basement's probably one of the worst ones. But I think it's still better than attic. I think it's still better than some other options, certainly better than a garage. Most people, a closet in a regular living space is probably a really good starting place. But obviously, if your collection grows, you're probably going to have to go to something like a basement, where you just don't have the space in your living space to store all that stuff. Again, you can look at maybe some totes or something like that. Totes are great because they cover a couple things. They cover direct water damage, and they're going to cover mold as well. Mold is a big one, especially if you're storing in a basement, because it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens over time. So, and again, something we're going to talk about too is trying to reduce the risk of mold through dehumidification. Theft is, I would say, on the lower end of the likely scale of risk. It's unlikely you can monitor your possessions with cameras. Operational security, OPSEC, is really crucial here. And what this means is do not post pictures online of your collection especially in local groups, or I see people posting there on Facebook groups, local Facebook groups, like statewide Pokemon Facebook groups, posting their collection with their name and everything. That to me is just screaming red flag. Hey, I got $50,000 worth of booster boxes here. I live in this town. All of my information except for my address is on Facebook. So that's something you want to keep in mind. This for the most part, this product, this investment is fairly dense in terms of financial value for what it is. So what I'm saying is, if someone knows you're storing that kind of product, you're opening yourself up for risk because it's I would call it smash and grabbable. It's small enough for that, for sure. And again, the last one on the list here is again, shipping. Everyone's going to experience damage in shipping. I'm sorry. Everyone is. You order enough boxes, it's going to happen. Again, it's the point here is buy from a reputable, dealer, someone who, or, get shipping insurance or whatever it is, to try to reduce that risk there. It's more of a hassle than anything. You're unlikely to lose financially there, unless you're buying from weird places online that are not reputable. Here are some more considerations here before we wrap things up. Location is everything. Again, the size of your collection is really going to dictate where you can store it. You should always try to store it in a safe, secure place. A place that is humidity and temperature controlled is of paramount importance. If you are storing it in a basement, remember you're below ground, so your risk of water damage is higher. Typically, mechanical spaces are in your basement. That's water heaters, things of that nature. So, any kind of massive rain event or anything like that, you could have flooding in your basement. And then humidity and temperature control in your basement is important as well. Dehumidification is king. If you are going to store in your basement, make sure it is on shelves. It's off the ground. It should be somewhat off the ground. That's not going to reduce the risk entirely, but that does help should there be any kind of flooding. Obviously, if you've had flooding in your basement previously, do not store product there. Another one that's people don't consider, especially with larger collections, is risks during transportation and relocation. So if you're moving or anything like that, moving your collection is obviously gonna put it at risk again. So just something to consider. One thing people do as well is buy individual plexi cases for some of their booster boxes, which I think is an interesting idea for more of the real expensive things. Again, it's not going to reduce that risk entirely. It's not like hermetically sealed or anything like that. But I think, you start your booster boxes start getting over $500-$600. I think spend an extra $20-$30 per box doesn't hurt. And it does retain a lot of that visibility if you're going to display it. So. And that's it. We're going to wrap up here. That was kind of just a quick rundown of some of the risks associated with this. And again, this is not to scare anyone off. It's just for you to consider. If you want this to be successful long term, you need to consider the risks. You need to make a plan of action to do this, and you're going to be doing it for a long period of time. Hopefully, you're storing this stuff to take advantage of those big upticks in appreciation over time. You're doing this for 5+ years. And really, physical loss of product, I think, is an inherent and unavoidable part of physically holding collectibles for a long period of time. I don't think you can avoid it completely. Again, even just getting boxes shipped in is a risky. It is a risk associated with it. So that's all I got for today. Again, I appreciate all your likes, comments, and subscriptions, and we will see you on the next episode of Pokemon Investing 101, which is liquidation and liquidity. We'll see you on the next one.